Eders Majestäter,
Your Majesties,
Kungliga
Your Royal
Högheter,
Highnesses,
ärade
Your
Nobelpristagare,
Excellencies,
mina damer och herrar.
ladies and gentlemen.
Hur
What brings
sker
about the great
de
shifts
stora omvälvningarna i
in the world of
litteraturens
literature?
värld? Ofta
Often it
genom att
is
någon tar
when
en
someone seizes
enkel
upon a
och
simple,
ringaktad form som
overlooked
ännu inte
form,
räknas till
discounted as
okonsten
art
i högre
in the
mening
higher sense,
och får den
and
att
makes
mutera.
it mutate.
Så blev den
Thus,
moderna
at one
romanen
point
till
emerged the
en
modern
gång ur
novel from anecdote
brevet.
and letter.
Så föddes den nya
Thus
tidens
arose
drama
drama
ur
in a new
upptåg
age
på
from
brädor lagda
high
över
jinks
tunnor
on
på
planks
marknadsplats.
placed on barrels in the
Så
marketplace.
detroniserade
Thus, songs in the
visor på
vernacular
folkspråket
dethroned learned
den
Latin
lärda
poetry.
latinska poesin. Så
Thus,
tog
too, did La Fontaine take animal
H.C.
fables
Andersens
and
sagan
Hans
från
Christian
barnkammaren
Andersen
till
fairy
Parnassens
tales from the nursery to Parnassian heights.
Varje gång
Each time this
någonting
occurs,
sådant sker förändras
our idea
idén
of
om vad
literature
litteraturen är.
changes.
I och för sig
In
borde
itself,
det inte vara
it ought not to be a sensation
att en
that a singer-songwriter now
sångare,
stands
låtskrivare
recipient of the
står som mottagare
literary
av det
Nobel
litterära
Prize.
Nobelpriset. I ett
In a
avlägset
distant past,
förflutet var
all
all
poetry was
poesi
sung
sjungen eller
or
klangfullt
tunefully
reciterad.
recited.
Poeterna
Poets
var
were rhapsodes,
rapsoder,
bards,
barder,
troubadours. Lyrics comes from lyre. But what Bob Dylan did was not to return to the Greeks or the Provençals. Instead, he dedicated himself, body and soul, to 20th century American popular music, the kind played on radio stations and gramophone records for ordinary people, white and black, protest songs, country, blues, early rock, gospel, mainstream music. He listened day and night, testing the stuff on his instruments, trying to learn. But when he started to write similar songs, they came out differently. In his hands, the material changed. From what he discovered in heirloom and scrap, in banal rhyme and quick wit, in curses and pious prayers, sweet nothings and crude jokes, he panned poetry gold. Whether on purpose or by accident is irrelevant. All creativity begins in imitation. Even after 50 years of uninterrupted exposure, we are yet to absorb music's equivalent of the fable's Flying Dutchman. He makes good rhymes, said a critic, explaining greatness. And it is true. His rhyming is an alchemical substance that dissolves contexts to create new ones, scarcely containable by the human brain. It was a shock. With the public expecting poppy folk songs, there stood a young man with a guitar, fusing the languages of the street and the Bible into a compound that would have made the end of the world seem a superfluous replay. At the same time, he sang of love with the power of conviction everyone wants to own. All of a sudden, much of the bookish poetry in our world felt anemic. And the routine song lyrics his colleagues continued to write were like old-fashioned gunpowder following the invention of dynamite. Soon, people stopped comparing him to Woody Guthrie and Hank Williams and turned instead to Blake, Rimbaud, Whitman, Shakespeare. In the most unlikely setting of all, the commercial gramophone record, he gave back to the language of poetry its elevated style, lost since the Romantics. Not to sing of eternities, but to speak of what was happening around us, as if the Oracle of Delphi were reading the evening news. Recognizing that revolution by awarding Bob Dylan the Nobel Prize was a decision that seemed daring only beforehand and already seems obvious. But does he get the prize for upsetting the system of literature?
Nej,
No, not really.
egentligen inte.
There is a
Det finns en
simpler
enklare
explanation,
förklaring, som
one
vi
that
delar
we
med alla
share
dem
with all
som
those
står
who
med
stand
klappande hjärta
with
framför
beating
scenen
hearts in
vid
front
några
of the
anhalt
stage
på hans
at one of the
oändliga
venues on
turné
his
och
never-ending
väntar på den
tour,
magiska rösten.
waiting for that magical voice.
Chamfort
Chamfort made the observation that when a master such as La Fontaine appeared, the hierarchy of genres, the estimation of what is great and small, high and low in literature, is nullified. What matter the rank of a work when its beauty is of the highest rank, he wrote. That is the straight answer to the question of how Bob Dylan belongs in literature, as the beauty of his songs is of the highest rank. By means of his oeuvre, Bob Dylan has changed our idea of what poetry can be and how it can work. He is a singer worthy of a place beside the Greeks, beside Ovid, beside the romantic visionaries, beside the kings and queens of the blues, beside the forgotten masters of brilliant standards. If people in the literary world groan, one must remind that the gods don't write, they dance and they sing. The good wishes of the Swedish Academy follow Mr. Dylan on his way to coming bandstands.